Hey friends, it's Zach with a few words before we get started. We are pushing towards our end of May goal of bringing on 50 new supporters to help make the Quaker podcast sustainable. So far, 16 of you have stepped up. Thank you so much. We just need 34 more listeners to sign up to meet that goal, and I know that we can get there in the next 2 weeks. We make this show because we believe that stories of spiritual courage act like an anchor in a loud and confusing world. But when you support the show, you aren't just fueling that mission. You also get access to special content, like bonus episodes and extended interviews. Today's episode features a conversation with Parker Palmer. It's a fantastic interview, but we had to cut so much great material just to fit it into our normal runtime. Later this week, our supporters will get exclusive access to the full uncut audio and video of that conversation. If that sounds exciting to you, now is the time to join. By pitching in just a little each month, you get that bonus content, and you directly help get these episodes out into the world, reaching more people who didn't know they were Quaker, or who just really need this ministry right now. If this feels valuable to you, please go to quakerpodcast.com and click support in the top right corner. Again, that's the support button in the top right corner at quakerpodcast.com. Thank you so much. And now, here's today's episode.
The problem with success or effectiveness being the primary norm of our work is that if we are truly called to take on big tasks like love, truth, and justice, we will never achieve success in our lifetimes. I have a bunch of heroes historically who've devoted their lives to that, and not one of them was able to die saying, "I'm sure glad I took on that task, so now everyone in the world can check it off their to-do list."
The Quaker
podcast. Story, spirit, sound.
Hi friends, it's John Watts. I know it's been a little while since I've made an appearance on the show here. That's partly because Zach has been doing such a wonderful job. It's also because I've been working on lots of stuff behind the scenes to make sure that this show is sustainable and to get our brand new video project launched successfully. Of course, this podcast is the first project that we launched back in 2023, and it is my happy place to be able to join you today for this very special episode with Parker Palmer. Parker's work as a teacher and author has found its way far outside the bounds of Quakerism. He has introduced people all over the world to Quaker concepts like the Clearness Committee and vocational discernment, and he's just a deep guy to talk to. I love his method of setting up a spiritual concept in like a mind-bendingly useful way. Like you'll hear in the interview how he compares our inner and outer lives to a never-ending Mobius strip. After he said that, the idea has just kind of stuck with me. I think about it nearly every day. Anyway, that's enough setup from me. It's so nice to be with you today, and here's the conversation with Parker Palmer. Parker Palmer, we're delighted to have you with us today. I wonder if we could start with a little bit of your spiritual biography. Of course, it's a Quaker show, so, let's focus on that part, but as much of your story as you want to share, how did you discover Quakers? What drew you to them, and what has kept you coming back?
I was born into the Methodist Church, and for a whole lot of reasons, I was very curious about faith and religion and God and spirituality from a very young age. So when I finished college, it just became very clear that God didn't want me messing around with her church, and instead sent me to Berkeley in the 60s to do a PhD in sociology with a focus in the sociology of religion. But as the completion of my studies drew near, it really became clear to me that I was not called, and there's that spiritual word again, I was not called to use my sociology in the classroom, but instead was called to use it on the streets of the city. So I went to Washington, D.C., joined with a couple of other people, and became a community organizer working on issues of racial justice. I burned out basically at the end of 5 years of organizing, and with my wife and our 3 children at that time, we looked for a place where we might spend a sabbatical year so that I could renew and go back to my organizing work. We ran across Pendle Hill, and long story short, we ended up staying for a year at this Quaker living learning community, which had been around since 1930, and had a really remarkable, intense round of daily life together, worship, communal meals, physical work to maintain the place, study, outreach, et cetera, and radical economic sharing. During that year, a position opened up as Dean of Studies, and I applied and I was accepted. And so that sabbatical year stretched into 11 years of really transformative living. And it was transformative in every possible way. I started writing there, and that led to some speaking on the road and to a vocation that essentially I've been pursuing ever since as a traveling teacher and independent writer and activist.
So you gave us a great segue. You've had a prolific career as a writer. Can you walk us through some of your work in this area? What drew you to this kind of writing, and what role has your Quakerism played in your writing?
So I had been a student for many years through a BA and MA and a PhD at Berkeley, and education as I knew it, as most people still know it, involves sitting in rows facing forward while a professor lectures from behind the podium. And when I arrived at Pendle Hill, I found some very gifted teachers seating their adult students not in rows, but in a circle, putting a text or a poem or a question or a piece of data or a proposition, an idea, a thought, a probe in the middle of the circle, as it were, and then hosting in a skillful way a corporate inquiry, a communal inquiry into what is this and what's it all about and how does it speak to us. And I was fascinated by the way teaching in that circular mode, rather than that line them up and shut up and memorize mode, evoked people's experience, brought more and more knowledge into the room as good teachers did what education is supposed to do, which is lead out from within what people know that connects with what it is we're trying to learn. Each of us, eyes and ears, hearing and seeing different things, amplifying each other's experience, and the result being this very rich tapestry of knowledge, so much richer than you can get from one person holding forth and allowing a little time for questions. Robert Frost once wrote, we stand round in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the center and knows. I just love that notion. We stand around in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the center and knows. And it felt to me like a meeting properly convened had that quality to it, of a mutual knowing that's evoked and connected with some mystery at the center of the circle, where we meet each other, not kind of on our left and on our right and across the circle, but in the center of the circle, when our own centers move to the corporate center, we meet each other in a new and deeper way. So I wrote a little essay called Meeting for Learning, imagining that was a phrase that had long been used by Quakers. I learned that it had never been used by Quakers. And so, I started feeling more at home. I started feeling maybe I get this, and maybe I can make a contribution to it. And what really fascinates me about that little essay, Meeting for Learning, which probably wasn't more than, 4,000 or 5,000 words long, is that it contains the seeds of a lot of the 10 books I've done since then.
I imagine most of our listeners will at least be familiar with your book, Let Your Life Speak. So I wonder if we could start there. If you could tell us a bit about that book, where the idea for it came from, and where the title came from.
Well, as you and every good Quaker know, I ripped the title off from the Quaker tradition altogether. I probably owe somebody, a lot of royalties. I don't know, but it's that Quaker phrase that I started hearing when I arrived at Pendle Hill. I was 35 years old, first exposure to Quakerism, and language like that just struck me with sort of blunt force. But as I say in the book, in some significant way, I misinterpreted what I was hearing. I thought let your life speak meant something like line up the highest ideals you can get your hands on and then try to conform your life to that. And that's a path that I don't recommend to anyone, because I think it results in a falsification of what Thomas Merton called true self. For Merton, true self was very close to what Quakers mean, if not the same really as what Quakers mean by that of God in every person. It means that inborn being that we all come into this world with, that I'm absolutely convinced has a shape and a character and a form when we arrive. I talk about it in terms of true self or soul. Hasidic Jews talk about it as the spark of the divine in every person. Secular humanists talk about it as identity and integrity. It's one of these words for which no one has the true name. And so it's never mattered to me much what you call it. But that you call it something, I think, does matter. Because if we don't have some way of naming the beingness of a human being, some way of naming identity and integrity, some way of naming soul, or that solid core of self, we end up just being raw material to be shaped in whatever form a market economy needs us to take, or our culture tells us to take. So, as I think most people who wrestle with these questions are aware, we spend a lot of time in life just trying to resist the model of life that other people have been trying to impose on us, whether that comes from family or culture or race or gender or sexual orientation, or whatever its source may be. We're all subject to pressures toward being other than who we are, pressures toward being somebody or something that's acceptable in our circles. So I spent a lot of time as a young social activist trying to emulate my heroes, which meant not being who I am. And so distortion sets in, and ego sets in, and you become embattled trying to reach a goal that isn't yours to reach.
So, Let Your Life Speak was pretty successful. Lots of people outside of Quakerism have encountered that book and been affected by it. You know, Quakers have this idea that when we follow our leadings faithfully, we sort of let go of the outcome. That our goal isn't to be faithful in order that there be a certain outcome, but faithfulness is the goal. So I wonder what your experience is of having put wheels on that idea. What is the life of Let Your Life Speak out in the world? What have you heard back about how it's impacted people?
Yeah, I hear a lot about it, and I hear a lot about the chapter on depression. I think of all the words I've written, probably those have packed more punch per square inch than most others. But what really interests me about your question is the seduction, the temptation of doing something in order to achieve a particular result. And most often in this culture, the result goes under the general title or label of success, right? In fact, there's a very important piece of my thinking about social change that has to do with this, which is that we live in a culture, this American culture of ours, that is always asking the question of, are you succeeding? And the metrics for success are very narrow, very mechanistic, very materialistic. And people want to ask that question every day. As someone has said, it's like we plant a flower and then we rip it up the next day to see how the root system is doing. And therefore, flowers never grow. The problem with success or effectiveness being the primary norm of our work is that if we are truly called to take on big tasks like love, truth, and justice, we will never achieve success in our lifetimes. I have a bunch of heroes historically who've devoted their lives to that kind of thing, love, truth, and justice kind of thing. And not one of them was able to die saying, I'm sure glad I took on that task, so now everyone in the world can check it off their to-do list. If we live and die by effectiveness and success, the results are very predictable. We will start taking on smaller and smaller tasks because they're the only ones you can be effective with. So I think while I don't want to give up on effectiveness, that's a real world question that we have to hold responsibly. I think we need a higher standard. And for me, I call the standard faithfulness, which I define very simply. Have I been faithful to my own gifts? Have I been faithful to an honest observation of needs in the world? And have I been faithful to those points at which my gifts might intersect those needs on a path of service? If I can say yes, even in a small way, at the end of the day, to that question, I think on balance, I'm probably doing okay, and probably can maintain some sort of witness for love, truth, and justice without racking myself on guilt for not getting the job done, which then leads to burnout and me exiting the field.
We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we tackle the friction between our deep inner lives and the dominant culture that we interact with every day. Parker shares his philosophy about how we stop letting the world break us down and start reshaping it instead. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I recently got together with the rest of the Quaker staff, and I had a simple question for them. What were you doing when you were 22 years old?
I was at Pendle Hill for the Young Adult Leadership Development Program.
I was a resident student on the campus there at Pendle Hill.
I was the English tutor for a Buddhist Lama in Dharamsala, India.
Your early 20s are such a unique period of life. It's this beautiful, energetic time of radical change and hope, but it's also a time of limited resources and scattered direction, which is exactly why Quaker Voluntary Service was founded. Here's Haley Castle-Miller, the operations manager at QVS.
Quaker Voluntary Service is a service year opportunity for young adults ages 21 to 30. And it offers an opportunity for young adults to live in community with one another, work at a local service-based organization, and explore Quaker spirituality.
Haley is also a QVS alum.
I'll just add that I feel so lucky to have had the QVS experience right out of college, and it really provided me with something that was grounding at the time.
QVS gives young adults a concrete framework to explore their purpose, built on 3 pillars: community, service, and spirit. And for current fellows like Lauren Lee, that framework is life-changing.
Learning that there was a safe place to explore all these things I've been thinking about for years, with funding and support from just so many people. That's what drew me to QVS. It's been an absolutely spiritually transformative year for me.
But transformation like that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes an organization of people who care, people who can pay the rent, keep the lights on, and buy groceries, so that these 20-somethings have the time and space to do the heavy, world-changing work that they're called to do. I asked Executive Director Greg Stefanski how our listeners can support this work.
The program is supported by many volunteers who wear a variety of hats, and the fellows have really benefited from the wisdom of their elders and those who have life and work experiences. And so we're inviting folks to reach out if they feel led by Spirit to connect and want to support our fellows, because we have a variety of ways that they can do that. And certainly the financial support makes a big difference too.
So whether you're 22 or 82, you can make a difference. By donating to QVS, you are providing young leaders the freedom to pour their entire selves into our communities and to become the change makers that we so desperately need for the world of tomorrow. Go to quakervoluntaryservice.org to make your donation or to learn more about how you can get involved. Help empower the next generation of leaders today at quakervoluntaryservice.org. And now, back to the show.
In researching your work, I have been captivated by your message about the inner and the outer life. I think it's something that Quakers and maybe people of all faith struggle with, is kind of a compartmentalization of our spirituality, that it becomes easy to just be a Quaker on Sunday morning, and then the rest of the week, you're just a normal member of the dominant culture. You suggest that there's a more nuanced way to look at the relationship between our inner spiritual lives and how we are in the world outwardly. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what's the impact of changing our mindset around this?
Yeah, that's another great question. You have a lot of great questions. So one of the images I use to talk about this is the image of the Mobius strip. It's a little hard to explain in a non-visual way, but it's spelled Mobius, and if anyone wonders what it is, you can Google it and get a physical image of a Mobius strip pretty quickly. Basically, it's a geometric form that is, of course, that you can make out of a strip of paper that is three-dimensional, but it only has one side. So it sort of defies common sense. It's a form in which one side of this strip of paper is twisted in a way to join to the other end of that strip of paper, so that what looks like the inner side of the Mobius strip keeps blending into what looks like the outer side of the Mobius strip. And if you travel around it with your finger, you have to keep saying what looks like the inside becomes what looks like the outside, and back to what looks like the inside, because as the finger test will prove, there is only one side to it. And so when I ran across the Mobius strip as just a geometric shape that intrigued me, I realized that's how life works. We have stuff inside us, all kinds of stuff inside us. We have not only that of God in us, we have a lot of other voices as well. And we have to be constantly at work sorting and sifting among those voices, I think in solitude and in community, and making purposeful decisions about which of those voices or energies or forces, whatever you want to call them, we want to bring into the outer world as that Mobius strip merges from inner to outer. And when we do that, we reshape a little part of the world. As one of my friends says, you can't change the world, but you can change whatever is within 5 feet or so. And so we change at least a little bit of the world as we decide, I'm going to go out with this voice or this attitude or this action or this spirit. And then the world gets hold of that and it sends stuff back at us. Sometimes it's affirmation, sometimes it's negation, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's hate, and all kinds of stuff in between. And then we have a decision to make about how we want to process that which the world has sent back and respond to it as we take our next breath, as it were. Inhale, exhale, in and out, shaping the world and ourselves as we go. And where we are then receiving the world's feedback on whatever we've put out there, asking ourselves, how am I going to hold this? How am I going to process this? Am I going to return anger for anger? Am I going to try to absorb that anger and return it in some form of more creative response? At every point of exchange, being deeply thoughtful about how we want to shape ourselves and the world, because whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, that's exactly what we're doing. We won't always get it right. That's not the point, but the point is to keep learning from our experience. What is it that does harm in the world, and what is it that does harm to us? when we breathe the world back in.
Parker, I really resonate with your spiritual journey, and it also feels like we're in another sort of 17th century moment of deep upheaval right now where this tradition is desperately needed. So I wanted to ask, what is your prayer for the future of Quakerism, and what does it have to offer the world right now?
Well, I think it has several dimensions to it. I don't normally pray in terms of dimensions, but since we're doing a podcast, I think I'll maybe lower my standards a bit. Yeah. Prayer is often, just help or thank you or what? But I can't do that here so effectively. So, first of all, I pray that Quakers who are by and large older, a good deal older, if I understand the demographics correctly, will start taking their lead from young people who are on this path or finding their way onto this path. And so my prayer is that the older friends can let the tradition go into the trustworthy hands of younger friends, which older friends once were. And no doubt a previous generation of Quakers was appalled by the way they were doing stuff. So a good historical memory helps, but even more the grace that says the Spirit moves in wondrous ways, and we can't contain it. We can't judge it. We must encourage it, and we must listen. And I'm really, really grateful for the work you folks are doing with the Quaker and others who have been working for some time now on cultivating a younger generation of friends to help in practical ways to help all of that along. And my prayer is that your work too would be acknowledged and supported by an older generation. A lot of people my age don't know what a podcast is, and that's okay. But at age 87, my message to them is trust it, go with it. It's good stuff. It's just like the gramophone you grew up with in your grandmother's living room. You're listening to talking voices that have something to say, and that's what the younger folks are doing.
Thank you, Parker. Zach said you might have a poem to share with us that on the way out here that is particularly speaking to you right now.
So I think what I'll do, it's the first day of spring, which is a wonderful thing to celebrate, especially after the hard winter we've had in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a poem that came to me one day when I was in the depths of clinical depression. And I was walking down a country road way out in the middle of nowhere, no traffic, no other people, just fields, crop fields that had been plowed on either side of me. And I recognized that because I came from people who farmed, I recognized that this particular field had been harrowed which is something farmers do as a first step in loosening the earth for a new season of planting. And this poem started coming to me, which grew in me over the next few days and weeks, and began to have a healing effect. Didn't happen right away. It takes time. But I'm convinced that this planted a life-giving seed in my tortured consciousness at that time, for which I'm grateful. So the poem is called Harrowing. The plow has savaged this sweet field, misshapen clods of earth kicked up, rocks and twisted roots exposed to view, last year's growth demolished by the blade. I have plowed my life this way, turned over a whole history, looking for the roots of what went wrong, until my face is ravaged, furrowed, scarred. Enough. The job is done. Whatever's been uprooted, let it be seedbed for the growing that's to come. I plowed to unearth last year's reasons. The farmer plows to plant a greening season. So my prayer for Quakerism would be to plant a greening season.
Amen. Parker, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful talking with you.
Oh, it's really been a joy to talk with you two, and thank you so much again for inviting me back.
Thank you for listening, and thank you to Parker Palmer for joining us on today's show. Check out our website at quakerpodcast.com for discussion questions, a transcript of today's episode, and links to more resources. This episode was edited and produced by Zach Jackson, with help from me, John Watts. I also wrote and produced the music. The Quaker Podcast is a part of The Quaker Project. We are a nonprofit Quaker media organization dedicated to giving Quakers a platform in the 21st century. If you like what we're up to, please consider becoming a monthly supporter. You can go to quakerpodcast.com and click support in the top right corner. It takes less than 5 minutes, and we really appreciate it. And now, our daily Quaker message, as read by Grace Gonkalewski.
Parker J. Palmer, 1991. The core message of all the great spiritual traditions is be not afraid. Rather, be confident that life is good and trustworthy. In this light, the great failure is not that of leading a full and vital active life with all the mistakes and suffering such a life will bring, along with its joys. Instead, the failure is to withdraw fearfully from the place to which one is called, to squander the most precious of all our birthrights, the experience of aliveness itself.
To get Quaker wisdom in your inbox every day, just go to dailyquaker.com. That's dailyquaker.com.